turning to early intervention and the importance of that, I mean, one of the countries I've been reading about recently is Estonia, which, and at the age of 3, they do speech, language and communication checks on every single 3-year-old child and introduce early intervention for any children showing any difficulties with speech, language and communication. So by the time they start school, they're not starting school much further behind. I was talking just last night to a speech and language therapist who was saying that if you can make a difference before a child is 5, they are over 50% more likely to catch up with their peers in terms of their speech, language and communication. Now, she said she sees pupils at the age of 4.5 when they start school. So she is expected to make a difference, make all the difference within only 6 months. And surely it seems obvious to everybody that if we started making this difference at the age of 3, these children could catch up.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about word gap, because I don't like it when the department keeps talking about, there's a word gap. It's not, it's conversational turn-taking as well that's been seen as crucially important. And speech and language importance isn't just about sort of communication, it's also about, as James was just alluding to, the number of children in our PRUs and in our alternative provision that have communication difficulties, which will affect, of course, their behaviour, their cognitive development. And I feel quite passionate about this, and that the Department for Education are not giving oracy and speech and language and communication the importance that it needs, and I'm hoping that you're going to be the man to change that.
Well, look, apart from the bit about DFE not putting enough emphasis, I mean, I agree with that. I agree with you, in fact. And I've written stuff about this in the past, I mean, before I was doing this job, about the absolute crucial importance of years 0 to 5 in a child's life, and how it is by far the greatest point of leverage, if you like, on children's development, on social mobility, on social justice, on educational attainment. And so, I mean, pretty much everything you said I would agree with. Look, the point about the word gap is there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of positive correlation between a lot of these measures. You know, if you're quite high on one, you tend to be quite high on the others as well. Word gap is easier to measure than some of the others, and it's perhaps easier to for people to get their heads around. And so I think it is a useful measure, but it's not the only. Of course, it's not the only thing. It's also about pro-social behaviours and all sorts of other things that you mentioned or alluded to. You know, the provision of early years education, 15 hours a week for disadvantaged 2-year-olds, is an important part of this. And there's 163,000 children benefiting from that programme who didn't have that opportunity.
But could they have a statutory check, as they do in Estonia, at 3 years old? Because I think that would make such a difference. Because at the moment, they're only picking up on the problem when they start school at 4.5. If they picked up on, if every child was checked for speech and language communication at the age of 3 in the, with the free childcare.
Well, we have the early years foundation stage system, and we have almost universal take-up of 15 hours of free early years education for 3 and 4-year-olds, more of whom are now in nurseries and settings rated good or outstanding. And so, I mean, I think, a lot of this infrastructure is in place. And as I say, there are 162,000 children, 2-year-olds, benefiting from early years education, which was never available in any previous government. And I think these are all positive things to be welcomed. But there's one more really important part of this jigsaw, and that's what happens at home. And it is actually relatively easier to think about what happens in nursery, what happens in school, and so on. But what happens at home makes a big difference. And it's very, very hard for for lots of reasons, very hard for public policy to sort of go there, as it were. And I'm not, and again, this might be something that perhaps, I feel I've been sort of contributing to your forward scheme of works. I'm not trying to do that. There might be something that perhaps this committee might like to look at some point, because helping, facilitating, enabling the home learning environment actually can have a really, really beneficial impact on educational outcome and a massive impact on social justice.
Just to go back to, so you were saying that the infrastructure's there, the foundation stage curriculum's there, you have all these outstanding nursery provision, but they're not, or they don't appear to be fundamentally making those checks on speech, language and communication and bringing in that early intervention. So maybe it needs an emphasis from the department to say how important this is, that is looked at, because I don't believe it is given the same level of importance as it is in terms of numeracy and literacy, and yet we know it's of crucial importance to a child's entire life. And therefore, if the department's able to say, this really matters, this is really important, that might make a difference.
Got it.
Michelle.